right, good evening and welcome to the Board of... Good. Good evening, welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, April 22nd. Madam, Mr. Clerk, if you'd read through the agenda.
After the Pledge of Allegiance, we have open forum, followed by appointments with Rob Lynch, Lynch Marini and Associates, for an update on the fiscal year 18 audit report, and a presentation from Mr. Child, Veteran Service Officer, and then we'll go into 5 action items.
All right, thank you. If you'll all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Jump right into our first appointment with Rob Lynch of Lynch Marini. I'm sorry, we'll go and do open forum. And seeing that no one's here for open forum, I'll close open forum. And we'll move right into our first appointment with Rob Lynch of Lynch Marini and Associates. Give us an update on the fiscal year 18 audit. Good evening, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. Good evening. And thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening to discuss the fiscal year 2018 audit for the town. As noted, I'm Rob Lynch with Lynch Marini and Associates, and we performed the audit for the town for fiscal year 2018 and issued our report. We reviewed it with management, and the reports have been issued. The main objective of the audit is an opinion on the financial statements. The audit is conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. The town was required to have a single audit conducted under uniform guidance. Management's responsibilities include designing and implementing internal controls over financial reporting and compliance with laws and regulations, establishing financial policies and procedures, ensuring the financial information is reliable and properly reported, and preparation of the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. As a result of our audit, we did issue an unmodified opinion. The reports are ours, the financial statements are the town's, which is the unmodified opinion is the opinion that you want. It means that the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects and can be relied on by the users. We didn't note any instances of noncompliance, material noncompliance, or significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. The single audit did not report any findings, so you were complying with the single audit requirements. We did have a management letter where we had some recommendations for improvement in internal control that we've reviewed with management, and they have, as in the past, will address those issues going through. And you know, some of the comments, the current year comments related to improving the internal control, evaluating the internal control environment and risk assessments. And that's just an ongoing issue that it constantly needs to be monitored and updated. Implementing a fraud policy and complying with the investment policy. There were some unsecured bank deposits. And then we had some comments about OPEB and other GASBs that are going to be implemented in the future, just as informational comments. Financial statements themselves, there's 2 sets of financial statements. The government-wide financial statements are full accrual. They report your government activities and your business-type activities, which is water and solid waste. And that reports all assets and liabilities. You know, your capital assets, all your receivables are accrued, as well as all your liabilities are reported, including OPEB and your net pension liability. You know, as a result of those liabilities, the unrestricted net position of the town was in a $64.2 million aggregate deficit. But on a fund basis, which is more in line with how the books are maintained by the town accountant under UMAS, Uniform Modified Accounting System, or Massachusetts Accounting System, sorry, where all the major funds get reported and all the other governmental funds are combined together. The general fund is a major fund and reported separately. And under generally accepted accounting principles, that includes the stabilization funds because there's no funding source. The general fund unrestricted fund balance was $8.9 million. So you do have some healthy reserves for the town. you know, you're probably comparable with your peers. You're doing pretty well with those reserves. Not quite to the limits of what's recommended by the GFOA, but for Massachusetts community, in our experience, that's pretty good, you know. So I think what you want to do is develop some type of fiscal policies and target ranges of where you want those reserves, so you can try to help with your budgeting process there. On the budget schedule for fiscal year 2018, you did have a favorable variance in excess of your revenues over expenses of 1.4 million, which is, when you look at the entire budget, that's less than 3% of your entire budget. So it seems like a big number, but you know, you do want to continue, as you've done in the past, of being conservative in your budgeting process to be able to maintain and keep these reserves, which helps with the bond rating agencies and your bond rating. So overall, that's a brief overview. I know you've had the report, so I could answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions?
No, I said we sat down when you gave it to us before, and just a few things that we have to look at. Other than that, it looks like we're doing very, very well.
Yes.
Carol?
No, I just appreciate you coming to share it for the public's sake, too.
Sure.
Thank you.
And with OPEB, I mean, we're pretty much in line with other towns. I mean, I know we're not Wellesley where we've paid that off or have it fully funded, but we're pretty much, we're pretty in line with that.
I would probably say there's more towns, communities that are starting to fund it and get a schedule in place, and that's what the bond rating agencies are starting to look out at now, that you know of the liability of a plan in place to fund it, and you're sticking with that plan. You know, down the road, if more and more people start to fund it at a higher rate, you know, that may impact you. So, you know, you are looking at, it's a $65 million total liability that you have for OPEB. And there's $57,000 that you have in your OPEB fund. So that's probably something you do as part of your budgeting process, start to
Right.
address that.
All right, thank you.
But yeah, it's not all going to be done in 1 year.
No.
Mr. Chairman, and Rob can correct me if I may on the OPEB issue. I think what's going to happen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, at some point, we'll have to have a funding schedule to fund the unfunded liability, like the pension liability. And I don't know how many years that, when it will occur, but that'll be the same way. So it's, the fact that the town is putting money in is a good thing. But I think I agree with what Rob said in terms of towns are now doing it a lot more at greater levels. I think if you look at an MMA recent Beacon, the town of Leominster just fully funded their OPEB. So
Saw that.
it's becoming more, we're becoming more aware of the value. It does affect your bond rating and stuff, but I don't think it'll be long before towns will be required to put it on a funding schedule like the pension.
All right. Thank you. All right, thank you very much,
Very
appreciate
good.
it.
All right, thank you. Any questions, let me know. Have a good evening. Stay dry.
See you later.
Hmm?
It's Rockwood's first meeting. Maybe we should.
No. Just let folks know, Rocco Longo, our interim town administrator. Appreciate all the efforts you've put in the last couple weeks, and
Yeah, I've been here a few days, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I've got a lot to learn, and had my first meeting with the joint FinCom Capital Budget Committee. I will give a little report later, but I'm really happy to be here. Especially now it's raining, so it doesn't matter if I was outside, it wouldn't be so much fun. But I'm happy to be here and working with you guys, and I'm trying to get really acquainted with all of your processes, the budget, especially in town meeting. I assume that's what the board wants me to do, so thank you guys.
Thank
for
you.
the relationship.
We're happy you're here, too.
Thank you.
all right, and next appointment is Robert Charles, Veteran Service Officer. There's an update.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and residents of East Bridgewater. It is with a bittersweet feeling that I'm here tonight. I am here to let everyone know that I will be retiring from my position as veteran agent as of July 26, 2019. At this time, I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Town Administrator, all Town Hall departments, and residents of East Bridgewater for the devoted and continued support of the veteran and of my position. I'd like to give a big thanks to my predecessor, Peter Spagone, and his assistant, Martha Redgate, for notifying me of this position when it became available, and I was able to apply for it. I'm very appreciative of that. I'd also like to thank the selectmen and the town administrator at the time of my selection, and the opportunity to help my fellow veterans of East Bridgewater. And those selectmen were David Walsh, Peter Hamilton, and Teresa McNulty. And George Samia was the town administrator. It has been an awesome ride and a great honor, and I want to thank everyone involved.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Any questions, concerns? Like I say, it is bittersweet, bitter because I'm going to be leaving friends and coworkers behind, but not forgotten, and sweet because I'll have more family time, so.
So what are your plans, Bob, when you walk away from us?
To get up and have an extra cup of coffee in the
There you
morning,
go.
or stay in my PJs, and decide what we want to do that day, so.
That's great.
Great.
Well, we appreciate all your efforts over the years. I know you've increased the number of vets that you've been servicing over the years and working with and assisting, and
And hopefully it
so they and their
continues.
families appreciate it.
Are you still gonna come back for our parades?
That's debatable. Yeah, I'll have to see about that, yes.
Well, we wish you a long and happy and healthy retirement, Bob.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
all you guys have done for
I
me.
think we might see you before July 26th.
You probably will, yeah. I'll be around, but thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank you. And the next two appointments, we are tabling for the time being. And now we can move on to action items.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request of Evan Gray for East Bridgewater Commercial Club Youth Football and Cheer to hang a banner on Town Common to advertise East Bridgewater Youth Football and Cheerleading registration from April 15, 2019 to July 15, 2019.
All in favor?
Second?
I just have a question on that. We seem to be getting a lot of requests for putting these up there. At some point, we're gonna have to establish at what point in time where they're going, because we seem to be coming up with a new one every month.
Yes.
So, and we don't want people, once it gets up there, it shouldn't be moved. So we're gonna have to decide if we get multiple ones where they're gonna be going.
Right, I agree with David on that. And we don't have like a sign ordinance in town, right, or a sign policy, and this might be a way to address some of that. Because actually, Historic Commission asked me about this, because, it's 3 months, it's a long time, it's over Memorial Day, and maybe we do need to start thinking about where do they go and for how long.
And I mean, on certain weekends, especially if we're doing the parade or having
The
other
2-2 run,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's-
yeah.
So,
We'll look into it.
something to think about, put a policy in place going forward.
yeah, definitely. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the request from the Board of Health to use the outside Sachem Rock to hold a rabies clinic for dogs and cats on June 11th, 2019, from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Second?
Any further discussion? Anything? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the appointment of Joel C. Thomas as constable, effective April 10th, 2019 through June 30th, 2021.
All right,
Second?
all right. Any discussion?
Nope, Joel has been a constable in town. He probably has more training than most of the constables we have there, and as a resident, we get these requests often. I think we had one 2 months ago to appoint a constable, and until at some point in time we change something where we have elected and appointed, there's no reason why we shouldn't consider it.
All right.
I think that is something we should think about going forward, and I talked to Chief Allen. I don't know, did you want to ask the chief if he wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I'd spoken with the chief,
Well,
and if you want to come up
I-
and speak
he's
to it,
looking at me.
sure.
But going forward, we might want to think about this. We did just have an election where we, did elect people, but we appoint two, and maybe we need to clarify how we do this.
Sure. So, one of the things, this is my third year in the job. You always come across a new situation, so this was certainly the first time this has come across my desk. One of the things that I discovered in, looking at our town infrastructure, town reports, and talking with town council is we did just have an election. We have 5 elected town constable positions. We also have appointed constable positions, which are self-bonded, and over the last 6 to 8 years, that number's been anywhere from 5 up to 14 on an annual basis. You know, when talking with town council, you know, and getting some, you know, some advice from other town departments, you know, they conflict with one another. We have an election, and then you also have appointed for the same position. You know, one of the things that, on the advice of town council, that I would certainly want to recommend to the board would be to put a policy in place, you know, to have a process, particularly, you know, I think it's twofold. One, do you want to continue with the infrastructure of elected and bonded? And if so, how that works, the mechanism for that. And then on if it's bonded, you know, what is that process? Because right now, the way it works is they go through an application. You know, Mr. Thomas, there is no reason, you know, for me to disqualify him from your consideration, his background, training, et cetera. But as far as the process itself, we really have nothing in writing. And, you know, I think it would behoove us, from talking to town council and looking at some other departments in the area, they go through a vetting process. You know, one of the concerns that we have, that I have as the chief, and then the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association has, is we potentially, or we have people out there that are doing law enforcement work that have no law enforcement training, no law enforcement background. And that's something that, you know, we want to, you know, consider, especially when they're in town positions. So, you know, something for the board to consider.
I know the state legislator has been working on this for several years with no forward movement. I mean, some of these laws go back probably to the 1800s.
1865 on this one.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I mean, you know, Mr. Thomas, I mean, his resume speaks for
Yeah.
itself. I mean, he definitely holds all the credentials. I do think we should table this until we get a little more information from town council, try and get some sort of policy set up moving forward.
Again, I'm not too sure at this stage of the game why we should be tabling it. We have nothing in place that, especially where the process is, it goes through a check through the police department. We know he has all the credentials. Even if we table it, we're not going to be able to bring in something later that's going to prohibit this appointment. We may be able to prohibit future appointments or future elections, but tabling is not going to change the outcome of this.
No,
in
but
my
at least,
opinion.
but I think at that point, we'll actually have a policy that's going to be applied to everybody that applies. I mean, you know, I just think we need
But it
to
wouldn't
shore
be
this up
effective.
a little.
It wouldn't be effective until then. This request is here now.
It is, and I don't think it would take that long for town council, working with them, to set up some sort of a policy. You know, either we look at what other towns do and what their policies and procedures are, and go from there. I mean, I don't think it's gonna take that long to move that ahead.
I'd like to hear what Rocco.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think the only issue is setting a precedent, and if you did make the appointment and do put a policy in, it might be treating people differently that come after the policy. So I think you could say to the chief, you want a policy in 30 days, he can work with town council, and you table the appointment and bring it back, and then with the policy, takes away any precedent. There's a bigger issue with this whole issue of appointing constables, and I just went through in another town, because how many constables do you even need? And in actuality, for the town's benefit, you know, the service is provided for free through the deputies. But I know there's been a culture, and you've had them for a long time, but I don't, the board, you know, can do what your pleasure is, but I would recommend following the chief's guidance and tabling it until you had a policy in place, then setting a precedent based on that policy. And it sounds like the candidate that's applied tonight would not have an issue meeting so tabling it for 30 days. And it is very unique when you have an election and then things don't work out, and what is the message to the voters? It's very confusing, and there's a history here. I think ultimately the foundation of this is an antiquated law. So the board can still have, you know, as many, and maybe that should be part of the policy. How many constables do you need? Because and I'd like to ask town council about the liability the town's exposed to, because that was an issue in one town that I worked in, where if you went to a house and did something that you weren't supposed to do, you know, I guess, you know, that should be addressed. I'm not sure, I'm not an attorney, but I think that should be addressed. But if it's not unfair to the chief to come back within 2 weeks or 30 days with a policy, would probably be the safe bet for the select board.
Mr. Thomas, would you like to say something?
I don't have a problem with chief would like to do, I would like to see a time limit on it. And my personal feeling is when you're appointing people, you have a different standard than the election. And I'm appointed in 4 other towns, and most of the towns have asked me, have I been to the police academy and am I current in-service training? And I am. I have went to the academy and graduated in 2005, and for the last 14 years, including this year, I just completed my in-service training. I think all of the constables should have the background. There should be a training policy as part of your standard as well.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, too, you make the appointment. All I can tell you is there are no disqualifying reasons to disqualify Mr. Thomas.
Oh, yeah, no,
I'm
not at
quite
all,
sure
no.
what saying, I think words might have got mixed up. a
Oh, yeah,
little.
oh, no, there's nothing that disqualifies him whatsoever.
And as far as
So-
for making the appointment, that does lie with you. My certainly, in fairness to Joel Thomas, if the board were to decide to table this, I would expedite doing anything with town council, because as Mr. Sheedy said, his background, his training experience, is certainly amongst, the top in this region as far as constables are concerned.
I mean, do you think you'd come back in 30 days?
I mean, I'm gonna be on the phone with town council first thing in the morning to, make a determination, but, I would push to do it sooner than that.
All right.
I'd be all right with tabling it, given that there's a limited time frame on that, and given that, Joel spoke and said that he was okay with it as well. I'd be fine with that.
Okay,
Anything?
that's fine.
Yeah, okay, we'll table that for now. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mm,
Motion to table.
motion to
I'll make a
table.
motion, we table this and
Us-
look for a request within 30 days to bring him in front of the Board of Selectmen for another meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Joel has,
Oh,
I think
sorry,
Joel
go
had a
ahead, Joel.
discussion point.
I know you have the question about why you need so many of them and why so many apply. Part of it is that I am a vendor for the Department of Revenue, Child Support Enforcement, and there are certain things you can only do in the towns you are elected or appointed in. And that gives myself a greater working area, but it also helps out Department of Revenue, Child Support Enforcement in carrying out their part of child support and making sure that it gets served by the right people. Just as another thought as to why people are trying to get multiple towns.
People bring different skills
Yes.
that they, and licenses that they have.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, with his knowledge, he might be helpful to the chief when he drafts the policy to provide some guidance, because that's important to know. And as I said, there's a lot more to appointing a constable than just a typical appointment, but if you have the right vetting process, in fact, having them come and interview with you is probably the right thing to do, but I think he made some good points. He could be, if you would, be helpful to the chief, and when that policy comes forward, to provide some.
A lot of people have no idea what a constable is or what they do
That's right.
and why they do it.
That's right.
And that is right across the board.
Yep.
I would be glad to help with the chief.
Yeah, great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the following common vicular license for the period ending December 31st, 2019. License number 50, Deli Italiano, Michael Simonetti, manager, 118 North Bedford Street, hours Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Second,
Any further discussion?
a new deli.
Yeah, the food there is excellent, so.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye. Wish him well.
He's going to bring us a sample, did you say that?
I hope
Carol?
so. Is that vice chairman's responsibility to
is.
get food lined up for them?
As of now, when you haven't done it.
I will, yeah, I like that.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the following application for one-day liquor licenses from the Villa at Ritter Country Club for weddings on the following dates as printed.
Great,
Second,
great. Any further discussion?
They have a busy season.
Yeah.
good for them.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That's the end of the action items, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I will head on to the interim town administrator report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few items to share with you, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I have started, it's been 3 or 4 days, and I'm working on getting the budget put together. There's a lot of support I'm getting from the fiscal team, especially the town accountant. It's been converted from Lotus to Excel. I did share it with the Finance Committee, and I did attend the meeting tonight just to kind of get a brief overview on what needs to be done and the deadline that we talked about, May 20th of that joint meeting that we had. And I did share the idea and possibly making a very brief presentation with the superintendent. I haven't talked to her yet, but it may be helpful, but I'll take direction from the board, and I don't want to make town meeting any longer than necessary. But I know how the process works sometimes, and at the public meetings, when there's not good attendance, maybe a quick presentation at town meeting could be helpful, but I'll yield to you for some counsel on that. Also, I had a meeting with the chair and John Clifford to talk about the town meeting process and getting the warrant ready, so we're using the date of May 20th kind of as a deadline to get everything done, so that the board would have the joint meeting, can vote on the articles going forward, because time will fly very quickly. And there is a lot to get done, and I'm going to do my best to help with the budget especially. Want the board to be aware that I'm going to meet weekly with the fiscal team, with the assessor, with the treasurer, and the town accountant. I think it'll be helpful, probably more for me than for them, but we'll build a team, and I think we'll benefit from that. Because the budget responsibility and all those fiscal responsibilities does take a team effort. And we'll be working on not only the budget, but some policies to bring before you. And I think the policies will come forward in line with the potential benefit of, again, the bond rating, the credit rating that the town has. Also had a brief meeting with the school business manager this week, John Shea. It was a very helpful meeting. I also met with the Green Communities rep, and again, I need some direction from the board, and then the rep from the Old Colony Planning Council, with interest of having the town pursue the Green Communities Act. There could be upwards of $150,000 available for green entities, and you've done some things here I noticed in the building. Now, the good news about that application is that sometimes those things become a little burden for staff people or the administrator or the office, but there is a grant for $7,500 that we're eligible for to get the Old Colony Planning Council to put the grant together for us to apply. But I think, you know, when most communities in Massachusetts are now part of the Green Community Program, that money is going to go to the other towns, and it won't come to East Bridgewater if you don't apply. Kingston, Hanson, Whitman, Duxbury, Halifax, Hanover, Pembroke, and I can go through the whole list, but I think it would be a good thing, and with the board's permission, I would proceed with that first step. And then there'd be some education. At some point, we could talk more about it, but I did meet on Friday with the outgoing rep who is moving on to a promotion, but I met with the Old Colony Planning Council, and they'd be willing to do that grant for us. So I'll go through this, and we can talk about it if you have questions. I've continued to do the individual department head meetings, and it's really been a kind of a pleasure. The staff here is outstanding. Internal staff in the Selectmen's office included, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to meet people and learn a lot about the town. In fact, I could say the first time I've been in East Bridgewater is when I came here to meet with you guys and to work, so it's been interesting, and I didn't know much about the town, but it's pretty impressive, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to work with the staff here. I did have the opportunity to sit with Carol a little bit, and I'd like to do that with the other board members, and I'll continue to do that regularly just to get a sense on what you want me to do, and I sense now that obvious priorities are getting the budget together and getting ready for town meeting, and I'll continue to do that. As you heard tonight, with the veterans agent retiring, I can help the board if you'd like me. Again, I'd like some direction. I can get that process started. What I've done in other towns, and I'll work with you however you want me to work, is the initial stages of advertising and recruiting and bringing people in. And I would use a team of people to help me on the department head staff, only because sometimes empowering other department heads helps teamwork. It makes an impression on people applying for the job that it's not just a one-time and one individual person. In fact, if you knew a veteran or two that wanted to participate in the process, that could be helpful too, empowering a citizen to get involved. And knowing that the conclusion, we would bring 3 names forward to the selectmen, and you would interview the 3, and I hope you would tell me how stressful it would be, because we had 3 good candidates, and you didn't know which one to appoint, because that's the mission when you're bringing another department head in. And also, you know, the department head team, picking somebody brings that person a little closer, and to the staff and the staff to the new person coming on board, it could be very helpful. I wanted you to be aware of, I spent a little time with the fire chief this morning, and he, just so that you're aware, he's applied for $23,836 from the last storm. That's 75% of the cost. Sometimes little things like that get put aside. I think it's significant, and it shows the chief is taking the extra step to bring the money forward, and I thought that would be important for you to be aware of that. And I am going to pursue with our council, town council, training for the staff on two areas. Unlawful harassment training, I think it's important. The laws have changed significantly. I think the staff needs to know it. I think there's training that's provided to the support staff, and then there's training provided to supervisors. Supervisors have a little extra role in that training, and then eventually getting into just cause training. So I will have department head meetings, and when I meet with them the first time, I'll ask them if they want to meet once a month or twice a month during the transition period, and I'll ask them if there's an area that they'd like to consider for additional training. And the hidden agenda that I would have is that's kind of bringing a team together. So even when we sit and we talk, I mean, at least we're getting to know each other. And through the transition, I think it would be a good thing, and maybe that sets a precedent for them when somebody else comes in. It's nice to have a group already organized that's willing to support the administrator. So that concludes the brief, and I'd be happy to respond to questions if you have any.
Questions?
The only other thing I know, it's great to get the, team together for the veterans replacement, veterans age replacement. And I think we also have to get started on getting a team together for a permanent town administrator. Again, the sooner the better on how we're gonna deal with that.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, in that regard,
Share with them what you and I talked about on Friday with the 3 firms.
well, so probably the best way to start, you can choose a firm to assist you or not. Sometimes it's better to have a firm because there's a lot of responsibility and there's a significant amount of work. And I know that the selectmen staff will feel it. But I think if you bring in there's 3 consultants now that I'm aware of that do the searches. And if you look in the MMA bulletin and if you look at town manager's position, you'll see the 3 entities. One's in northern Mass, Danvers, the North Shore. Community Paradigm is out of Bridgewater, and the Collins Institute in Boston. I think the benefit of bringing 3 firms in is you'll learn something. They'll all have a little bit of a different approach. They'll all have a little bit of a different price. And I know price will be significantly influential on you, but I think taking advantage of bringing 3 entities in would be a good thing to do, and you'll learn something, and they'll learn about the town. But I think having the support's important. And just so you know that I can't have a role in any of the selection process. I still subscribe to my code of ethics. I can't help you with the process. I did provide you with the ICMA resource of recruiting a manager. I certainly would be an advocate for people or my colleagues to come here. It would be a great place to work. But other than that, I wouldn't be involved with any of the screening process. I wouldn't be involved with any of the selection. But I can help you with questions and those kinds of things. So when you're ready, we can set that appointment up. But I think you can do it in one night. I think if you limit their time to 15 minutes, it might extend your meeting a night. You can do it on a separate night. But I think it would be very valuable to you and to the public to hear what's involved with recruiting the administrator, because I don't think you've done it in a few years.
I mean, maybe we can, start calling them the next couple days and see if we can get them scheduled in for a next meeting. And like you said, keep each one to 15 to 20 minutes.
I can work with Rebecca, and I think we can do that. I'm sure they're pretty anxious to come in. I mean, it's something that they strive for. So, and I think they're for 3 different entities. So.
And I mean, your wife did call me earlier and tell me that, we need to get moving on this as well,
She
so.
called me before
we're
the
not
meeting,
here
too.
forever.
I got a registered letter.
I didn't get anything. I felt
Her
left out.
attorney. But no, I think that would be a wise thing for you to do, and then that would set the prescription going forward and how you can go through that process. But that's what I'd suggest.
Okay.
Anything
I think
else?
that's great, and I love the idea of the Green Communities Grant. I think that's
Okay.
terrific for us to get on board with that.
And, yeah, I agree. I think we need to, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. I think, getting a new veteran agent in, we've got to figure out how that's gonna look going forward. We definitely need to get these firms in here over our next meeting or 2, have their presentations done. One other thing from our meeting the other day with John Clifford, was he said that under the town bylaws, I believe we have to at least open town meeting on May 13th, I think
Yeah.
the date was,
Yeah,
so
we have
we're
to
gonna have to
open
check with the
and
moderator.
continue it.
Open it, and I think
I
we
think
can
he's
do
already
it.
been notified.
Yeah.
I think the good news is that good news to me is that you don't have to have a quorum to open the meeting and delay, because if you did, that would be tough to get people to come to a meeting so that you can move it to another date certain. So town council said under state law, you don't need a quorum to do that. And I'll help the board, and we can write either a press release or something so that citizens know that the meeting is just gonna be to set a permanent, or an effective meeting as opposed to the tabling because of the transition.
Yeah, let's get ahead of that so that people understand it before we do it.
Good point.
Rebecca, we've already notified the moderator he was all set with the 13th.
I don't know, but I'll know tomorrow,
I think we-
or maybe if you.
I don't know if I've asked him about the 13th. I've asked him about every other date, but I don't know if I've asked him.
Okay,
I mean, he was originally
right.
available on the 13th, so we should be.
You should just have every, like, Monday.
I know.
day that you just set aside, or whatever we decide to do.
He's usually fine with every date, so.
And I would bounce a press release off town council to make sure it's worded legally,
Yeah.
even though it's not a legal notice, but I'd want it to say exactly, he might want to refer to your bylaw or something like that.
And I think it's something we can do right here, prior to our meeting.
Absolutely.
So, we've had other town meetings in this room, I think, when we did the
Yeah.
TIF agreement years ago, so.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I just want to take a moment. I know with the changes we've had, probably a month and a half ago, the department head, several department heads are meeting with the schools, the larger departments, trying to start the budget process moving forward. And I just wanted to thank all the department heads that were involved in that process. Everyone just trying to, get their heads wrapped around the budget and what money's going where. And I'd like to thank town accountant and town treasurer. I think they've been working a lot of overtime lately with all the changes, so we appreciate your efforts from everybody. And, I just want to thank Rocco for everything he's been doing in a short amount of time. It's appreciated.
Yeah. And just for the record, Rocco really lives this job. He had a brief sent out to us at 10:17 last night
Yes,
to prepare us for today.
the communication has been terrific.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Great. Anything else?
No, welcome back to the East Bridgewater kids. They had quite an adventure in Paris. They were
Oh, yeah, the last kids in
there
Notre
within
Dame.
hours of Notre Dame,
Yeah.
the fire starting. I really think, and I don't know who we need to tell, but their class theme song needs to be "We Didn't Start the Fire." Just gonna say.
All right.
With that, a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Thank you.